Hey everybody, good morning. So yesterday I made this box for La La Land Crafts virtual retreat, and this Marci I did not show anybody how to color, and so I wanted to make sure that I showed everyone how I colored it so they wouldn't be left hanging. And this is also what happens when you get up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. So we're going to be coloring. This is Heart Locket Marci, and she comes with her little sentiments in here. And I'm going to show you how well she stamps because she is red rubber and she's absolutely amazing. So I'm going to put her right here. I have my screen zoomed in a little bit so that y'all can actually see what I'm doing. And once I start coloring, I will actually zoom in a little bit more so that you can see exactly what I'm doing. So today I'm going to be using Memento ink. It is the suggested ink by Copic, the company who makes the marker, which is 2 actually, .too. They're in Japan. And so I'm going to be using Memento ink Tuxedo Black. And then I'm also going to be using these markers. Don't worry about writing them all down right now. They're all up in the description of the video. And I will go over them. I will show you my cap. I will do the whole thing so that you can follow along. So I'm also going to be using my favorite paper. I am a what you call a heavy-handed colorist. I like my layers of ink and I like to color, and this is 100, listen to this. Can you hear that? How thick? So this is 110 pound Neenah Solar Crest White, and that is also up in the description, and I've also given you a link to Amazon so that you can get this and so you can get this. All right, let me move these out of the way. Now, with the La La Land Crafts stamps, you do not need to use a MISTI. They stamp so nice and so beautiful, but I have shaky hands. So I like to use my MISTI because I tend to rock the stamp and then it gets all smudgy and it looks all terrible. So I am just going to go ahead and use my MISTI to stamp this. And what I'm going to do, because this is red rubber, so you've got that cling mount, so I don't need this black piece. So I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to get my hair off the stamp. That would help. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe take this white backing off. Now I save my white backing because when I'm done stamping, I will stick that back on just so that it doesn't stick to the plastic of the bag. I don't like wrestling with the bag. So I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to put my little Heart Locket Marci on there. Flip that over and we're going to get her all inked up. Now these stamps are so fantastic. You do not normally need to stamp twice. But with Memento ink, for me, it just doesn't stamp that nice, deep, dark, luscious black that I like so much. So sometimes I will, if the black isn't black enough for me, then I will go ahead and I will redo this. See, it's just not black enough for me. I don't like the ink to look, you know, and it's not the stamp, it's totally the pad. And what I mean by it's the pad, and it's because it's this fibrous pad, it's not the foam pad. So the foam pads actually give you a little bit more juice than the fiber ones. So I'm hoping someday that Memento will catch on to that wonderful foam trend. But I do love my Memento ink because it does not run. There we go. Now we've got some nice good darkness. So I'm not going to clean her right away. Don't worry, I'll clean her. but I want to get to coloring for you. So here is my image, and let me put my ink pad away right fast. And I am going to start out with, what am I going to start out with, guys? I'm going to start out with her face. So let me get zoomed in. Make sure I'm in the screen. Here we go. Yeah, buddy. There we go. So I'm going to start off with my skin colors. Now, my normal skin colors, I use E11. I use E04. And I'm sorry if I'm talking really quiet, but it is only like 6 something in the morning and my family is still asleep. That's why it's so quiet. I love it. So E21, and then I'm going to use E20 and E30 for my cheeks, and E00 and E00. Now, you do not need to use this many markers, and when you color a very small image like the critters or something from La La Land crafts, you don't need so many markers because it leaves you a lot of room. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to be using my E11 first. Okay, so I'm going to set these aside for right now. Get those ones out of my way. Set these aside. And I'm going to use my E11 first. And I do flip my paper around, so I may move this cap a little bit. But I will do my best to keep it in place. So I'm going to start out by putting this where you would have shadows from the sun. So the shadows from the sun, for me, I'm going to have the sunlight coming in from this direction, and I'm also going to have the sunlight coming in from this direction. That way, and I like to draw lines on my paper just because it helps me keep track of what I'm doing and where I'm going. So I am what you call a thin flicker. You can have thin flicks, which are like super thin, okay, and sometimes even thinner. And you have a fat flicker, which uses more of the side of their brush, or they push down on their nib. I don't like pushing down on my nib because I am a thin flicker, and I like to have those nice thin lines. So I'm going to be doing a lot of that, and I hope I can keep my hand out of your way. So that is where the light is going to be coming in on her face, and we're going to have light coming in underneath her chin and around her top, because we all know that we have some of that on the top. Now, everybody colors differently, okay? Don't let that stop you from doing your coloring, because your coloring is not going to ever be exactly the same as someone else's, because we are all wonderful and we are all different. So I'm going to go ahead and color her little hands, and then we have her legs. So I'm going to put some shading here underneath her skirt. I'm going to put a little bit of shading here at her boots, and she's going to have a little bit of shading on the inside of her thighs, because I know I don't have any light between my thighs. I don't know about you ladies or fellas that might watch this when I post it on YouTube. So, and I'm going to have a little bit for her knees right here. I'm going to bring that in a little bit, just right here, just a tiny bit. And then I'm going to give her a little bit of a nose, just a nice little tiny bridge on her nose. I want to bring this cheek down a little bit, and I kind of hop all over the place too. So if you have to, just go ahead and watch, and you don't have to color along with me. So I also I like cheeks on mine. I like to give her nice, plump, cute cheeks. Give her some little smile lines because you know she's smiling. Here we go. So that's all we're going to do with the E11 for now. But I'm going to set it aside because I am going to use it again. So now I'm going to use the E04. Now E04 is very dark. It's very harsh. This is going to be used for our cast shadows and our cast shadows only. This is not to shade the entire face. So we would have a cast shadow here at her hairline, down to her ear, not on her face, but just on her ear because it is a cast shadow. Watch Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo is a great source for checking out cast shadows. There we go. And then she's going to have a little bit of a cast shadow under her chin area. I know I do. And then she'll have it right here at the cuff of her shirt. She won't have much of one, but she'll have a little bit of one because I'm going to show you a technique so that you can do translucent, which reminds me, if I'm going to do that, I need to draw in her arms really fast. So I might confuse you just slightly when I go back for her arms. So her arms, you can't really tell. Oops, I need a little bit more right here. A little more cast shadow at her boots. So for her arms, you can't really see where her arms are going. And I'm done with this marker, so I'm going to put that one away. But you can't really tell where her arms are at or where they're going. So what I did is I looked for another Marci stamp that looked similar to the way her arms were, which is, excuse me, Fiesta Marci. She's kind of holding her hands and stuff the same way. So I kind of went off of how her arms are. So I'm going to take a pencil. Let me grab a pencil. And I'm just going to very, hopefully, carefully figure out, let's see, I put a little bit of a line here. And this is going to look a little distorted because it's behind fabric, so it doesn't need to be super perfect. So I put a little line there, and now I'm going to erase it just a little, just enough. You're not going to be able to see this. But I will. But you don't want to leave a really dark pencil line, because look, if you put a really dark pencil line, look what happens. It stays there. So you want to make sure that if you do draw, before you put your Copics down, you want to erase, down to where you can only see it. So she's going to have a little bit of a line here. And I'm trying to go off of what I did with my other Marci as well. And then she's going to have, see, she'll have a little bit of her bicep. And then we'll go down. And it does, like I said, it does not need to be perfect. Okay, so now I'm not going to use the E11 because that would be a harsh line. We want the skin to be a little muted down. So I'm going to use E21. And I'm just going to draw that in. Like I said, it doesn't have to be super perfect. And then I'll go back to that when I'm to that color. So now I remember to do my arms. But now I'm going to use my E11 again. And my E11 is going to go right over the top of that E04. And I am just going to blend it out a little bit. Bring that cast shadow down just slightly and give her a little bit of a shadow. And then one other thing I have to do is I'm going to bring her bridge up just slightly by doing some little flicks like this. Here we go. And I'm going to get this one brought out just a little bit, not much, because remember her sleeve is just translucent, so there's not going to be a huge cast shadow. And we're just going over the cast shadows. We're not going over everything else, because if you go over something, so say you want something to be a little bit darker, but you don't have that next marker. You can always go over this, let it dry, go over the marker again, and it'll make it darker. So I'm done with the E11. I'm going to put that away. Now I'm going to use E21. Now, let me grab that E11 real fast so I can show you. Now, when you're blending, especially on skin, and using so many markers, it can start to look muddled, or like she has what I call skin disease. That might be because you're over blending. So when you're blending, so I'm going to blend, I'm going to put some feather strokes here, or flicking strokes, whatever you want to call them. And then to blend it out, you don't go all the way back. Don't go all the way back, because see, it's not that great. You go about halfway and you blend out, okay? So just remember, only go halfway. Don't go the whole, all the way back. It might look like I'm going all the way back, but I'm really not. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this color out. Oh, I didn't bring her cheeks out on the top. Great day, I'm talking too much. So I'm going to go ahead and bring the tops of her cheek out just slightly. Not all the way, because we're going to bring it out with other markers, but just slightly. So that's the top of her cheek. Now I can do the rest of it. So now I can bring it out a little bit more and bring her cheek out a little bit more. Now there's also, while I'm doing this, there's also what you call a pusher and a puller. Now this right here, what I'm doing is I'm pulling, because I'm starting here and I'm pulling my marker down. I am pretty much a puller, not a pusher, unless you need La La Land craft supplies. Then I'm a pusher, and I'm an enabler. So I'm just going to bring that around, curve that little cheek, just bring it out just slightly. We're starting to form our cheeks. Now a pusher is someone that goes like this. They start at the bottom and push their marker up. And you have to just find where you're comfortable. And I've had people, after they take my classes, find that they're more of a puller instead of a pusher. So just find where you are comfortable. Your comfort zone is that's going to be key for you when you're first starting out, or just, I mean, I've been coloring for a long time and I still find new things that I want to do. So I'm just going over kind of where I did before, just bringing those shadows out a little bit. And I'm just using tiny, tiny flicks like this. I'm not using big, huge flicks. I'm just using tiny, tiny flicks. And we're going to get a little bit on her hand, but we're not going to do much, just like a couple lines. Just like a couple tiny lines. There we go. Now I'm done with my 21, but I'm probably going to use it later. You will see where the heavy-handedness comes in. So I'm going to set that one aside. Now I'm going to start with my cheeks. Now with the colors on Copics, for those of you who might be new, the R, or the letter, like this one is E. So the R represents red tones. The E represents earth tones. The 3, or the number right next to the letter, is going to tell you how much gray is in the color. Okay? The closer you get to 0, these are out of focus, sorry guys, but the closer you get to that second number being a 0, the more true your color is going to be. Okay? So just remember, the further away you get, the more muddled up the color is going to get. Now the third number, that is your saturation. So the closer to 0, the lighter the color. And it goes all the way up to 9. And if you're in the C's or the N's, the gray colors, it goes all the way up to 10. So the darker this number is, so the higher the number, the darker the color is going to be. So it doesn't matter if you're using, different R colors like a 3 and a 2, it's still going to be, the 9 is going to be the darkest. So I'm going to use R20 first because that's really bright, a lot brighter than the R30 because it's a 2, so it's going to be have less gray in it. And I'm going to put that towards the cheek. And then I like to bring it up just a little bit because it kind of connects her cheek with the rest of her face. In my eyes, my opinion only. I'm not sure if anybody else actually does that because everybody colors differently. So now, because this is so bright, and I don't want that super harsh pink on her face, I'm going to use R30 to I'm going to blend it out a little bit and I'm going to tone it down. And I'm only coming out about halfway, not even halfway underneath her eye, on the pink on her cheeks. And I'm going to go up on the sides again. There we go. Now I'm going to put those away. Whoops, I will not be using those again. Now I'm going to use E00. Now E00 will help me tone out those cheeks even more and blend them in, make them not look like somebody went up and slapped her face. So I'm going to go ahead and use my E00, and on this one I am going all the way back and going over, but it's also going to blend those colors together even more and make them even more wonderful. Now I'm going to go up around her eye, and I'm going to pull this out even more. Now yours, between colors, might look like there's lines. Don't worry, we're going to take care of that. So don't sit there and keep blending and keep blending, trying to get those lines out. Don't do that because you're going to overblend. We will take care of it. Don't worry. So now here's where her arms come in. I'm going to go ahead and just put some coloring right there, and I'm going to go back with yet another color. So I'm not going to really color that all in, but I'm not putting a lot of shadow on that since it's supposed to be muted. And now I'm bringing the rest of her leg out. And I'm leaving a little space of light for the light of the sun coming in. Now, one of the reasons you will get a lot of people saying, no, 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 you got to start with the light and color the whole thing and then go to dark and do your dark last. Just so you know, it's not a must. It is a whatever you want to do, whatever makes you comfortable. So one of the reasons that I go dark to light is because I feel in my mind, my crazy, crazy mind, that I can actually control where my shadows go and get a feel for what I want, how I want my image to look without getting too much dark and over blending. Because like I said, I am a heavy-handed colorist, so yep, I like my layers of ink. So this is E000, and I'm sorry if there's a shadow from the cap. I'm trying to keep it all out. So the E000, this is like, you've noticed it's 3 numbers instead of 2. This is super, super light. And with the E000s or even the E00s, this will, and I'm just going over it really, really lightly. This will get rid of your lines because it will blend it all together and it'll bring it all together. Do not use this a ton. I mean, I'm barely touching my paper. Here we go. And I'm going to do her arms. I'm going to go over and do this arm. And I'm going to finish out her legs. Now you also get a lot of people who like to leave a lot of white in contrast. And that is perfectly okay. It looks absolutely wonderful. I'm not one of those colorists because I was the child that when I got a Smurfs coloring book, I would actually color the whole page, like the sky, the grass. I would color everything. So if you want to color it all, color it all. You don't got to leave white. So I'm going back to my E21 because you can go back in if you want, bring those shadows back in and make things a little bit more pronounced, because I like things to have their shadows. I like them to look like they've got a little bit of depth. So I'm going to bring this out a little bit with my E21. And I'm going to go back and do her little smile line a little bit again. Just real thin. I'm not going to go wild and crazy on you. Go up a little bit. I'm going to get her nose a little. Got to do this smile line a little. Maybe a little bit underneath her lips. So I'm also going to go down on her legs, around her knees, and her boots. And when I do this, I just feel like it really, bringing those shadows back in just kind of really brings it back to life on some of the places that might have got a little too light. So that was E21. Now I'm going to do the same thing with E00, because I don't want that E21 looking all harsh. Because I do like things to look like they have depth, but I do like them to look smooth. Like it just flows, you know? Gotta get her legs. There we go. So there is her skin. Now you're probably wondering about her little lips. So for her lips, and this looks really blended. Let me zoom out a little bit and you will see it's just because the camera's trying to focus, but it's really not that bad. So I'm going to bring this back in so you can see exactly what I'm doing. So I'm going to use EO4 and I'm just going to touch little dots here in the corner. I mean, I'm barely touching down with my marker. And then I'm going to use R32 and I'm going to blend out that EO4 a little bit, and her lips are done. So now we have the case of the hair. So with her curly hair, well, it's not curly, but it's just very full and big. So for her hair, I'm going to do blonde hair, like a sandy blonde. I'm going to use E50, E53, E55, and E51. So 50, 51, 55, and 53. Okay? So I'm going to start out, one of the things that I like to do when we have very full hair is I like to map it out first. That way I know where I want my darkest color to go. Especially when we have curls, because I will be honest, curls are my nemesis. So I'm just going to put, I'm using my E50, and I'm just going to put, you probably won't be able to see this, you might see a little yellow, but I'm just going to put some lines in her hair where I want that darker shade to go. And I do normally color dark to light unless I'm mapping. So when I do a curl, well, I'll show you with the dark. I think that'll be better. And I'm usually just mapping the curls and mapping where, you know, just mapping the hard parts, the parts that I'm like, is this going to work for me or not? That way, because if you start out with your light color, if you mess it up, you can always cover it up. Okay, I think I've got all my parts that I want mapped. So that was E50. Now I'm still not going to go with the very darkest. I'm going to start with the second darkest, which is E53. So, because we're going to use E55 for contrast. So I'm just going to put some thin lines, and like I said, thin flicking is where we get, where we get our, you know, make it look like it's hair, like real hair. There are some cases where the hair, some people will just color the whole strand and not, or the whole thing with one color or a couple colors, but they won't use the flicking to get the hair strands. And that, for me, is really great if you want to do something like dreadlocks. That is excellent for doing dreads. So what I'm doing is I'm making a little line right here on this outer little bit of hair all the way up into the tip. Now to get the curl, I'm actually just going to use this line that I just made Instead of going all the way around, because I'm not good at drawing circles, I'm just going halfway, because I'm just going straight from that line and going up. So this part of her hair is going to be a little bit darker because it's behind, it's the back part of her hair. Same with over here. And then again, I'm going to make a line into that curl, and then I'm just going to bring the lines out from the line that I made. And I'm not going all the way up, and on the top I'm not going to go all the way out. I'm just going to put some like little root lines. She needs to go get her hair dyed again. Here we go. Oh, I gotta get this side. When there's hair in the front, you always want to do a little bit of dark because you're gonna have those shadow areas. And as you can see, I do one section at a time. That way I don't get messed up. So that was the E53. Now I'm going to use the E51. And I'm going to bring these lines out a little bit more. I'm not going to go in between on the white. I'm just bringing the E53 lines out a little bit further with my E51. Now if you do go in the center with the white part, that's more than fun. It works. It still works. It's not a problem. But when I very first started coloring this type of hair, I would try to go from here and come all the way around. Now I don't. Now I just use my darker marker and I use a lighter one to extend that line and bring it down. And we're going to go like this. I'm just pulling those lines up. There we go. See, her hair's starting to come together. So now we're going to use E50. And now we're going to go in between a little bit and we're just going to pull this all together. And I'm just doing random flick lines to bring it together. Not doing anything fancy. I'm not trying to stay anywhere. I'm going in between where the white is. And I'm just randomly putting some lighter blonde in there. Now I'm going to use the E53. Or the E55, I'm sorry. And this is going to be our darker contrast color. Let me move that over. There we go. So I'm just going to put a little bit in, not a whole heck of a lot, just a tiny bit. And this is to give it some contrast from the headband. But we also need some contrast back here where it's going to be darker because her hair is behind her. See how that really just, now like I said, if you don't have that darker color or you don't feel like using that darker color, just go over it again and it'll make it darker. So I'm going to go ahead and, sorry I keep moving this cap around on you. I'm going to go ahead and put a few little strands in here. And when I'm doing up here, I'm kind of moving my marker in a curve. Sometimes it helps too if you look at photos of people on Google, or look at your hair in the mirror, see how your hair flows or looks in the light. And the reason I go from top to bottom, or do each end, is because you usually have that little bit of shine towards the middle of your hair, but it's not an exact circle. So I just tend to put it right towards the center, and working from the flicks from the top to the bottom really help with that. Let's see, get this curl. Remember, draw the line all the way up into the tip, and then just bring the curl out from that line. Now, if this is too harsh for you, the E55, you can do exactly what we did with the E53 and the E51, and you can just go over that and bring it out, and that'll help to blend it a little more. Now, you may want to let it dry and go back if you have really juicy markers, because sometimes it's not going to look exactly the way that you want it to. I know that, like with skin and stuff like that, sometimes I just have to let it dry. But a lot of people will tell you, oh, you can't let it dry, you can't let it dry, you can't go back. My Copic instructor, because I went through the certification classes, she had actually, and I've done it myself too, I've gone back 3 years and gone back and changed an image. And she had told me that she actually went back 10 years and changed an image. So don't worry about, letting it dry. You can let it dry. It's okay. Let's see, I already did right there. There we go, and her hair is complete. So I'm going to put these markers away. Let's see. I'm going to see if this still looks. There we go. It's not so bad when it's just trying to focus. So now I'm going to work on her shirt. So I'm going to do the easier part first, which is the ruffles on the bottom part of her shirt. And then we will work on the translucent, and then we will work on the roses for her shirt and for her headband. And then I'll show you how I do the white for her skirt and the rest of her shirt. Okay, and make sure we get those lines in there. So for her shirt, I used a lot of colors. just so you're forewarned. So I used B000, B00, B000, B04, B02, and I thought I had my B01, but that's okay, we don't need it. I can do 2 to 0. Now, the general rule, and I mean general, and I'm using that lightly, it's more of a suggestion, because I don't always use it, believe me, I don't, is that you go at least 2 marker colors in between. So you would go, if you're going to do a blend, you wouldn't do B quad, B triple, and then B double. You would go B00, B02, and B04, because those markers are all 2 between. You can go 3 between. Now me, I told you I don't follow the rules in cases of using these colors. Other than that, I'm pretty much a rule follower. But I will use all three of these together. I have no issue with that. They actually blend really well when you do it that way. And also, I will do that with the grays, the W's, the T's, the N's, and the C's. So let's get started. I'm going to use this one last. I'm going to use this one first. So I'm going to put these over here. Now, for the ripples. Now, when I very first started doing the ruffles, these little squigglies screwed me up so bad every single time. So the best way to think of it for me, when you have this, and I color everything upside down, so I'll try to explain it both ways. But you have hills and you have valleys, right? Now, you would think that this section here was the valley, or the hill was the part where it went up on your dress. But it's actually the valley. Now, if you're looking at it upside down, like I do, it's the valley that it comes up. If you look at it right side up, it's the hill that goes up. So when you make your line to make the ripple line, it's going to be, if it's right side up, it's going to be in the valleys. See, it's already starting to look like a ruffle. And if you look at it upside down, like I do, it's going to be in the valley. That part is, and you're going to put your lines in the hills. Okay, it just depends on how you color. I can't even draw right side up. I have to draw upside down. I'm completely backwards. So I am going to start out on this side, and I have a hill right here. So I'm going to put just a little line. And then I have a valley, and then I have a hill. And now I'm going to come over to this side, and right here I have a valley, and then another hill, and then right here. Now, to make your ripples look really fantastic, what you do is you start from the top and you match it up and you bring it down just slightly. Same with this one, and this one, and this one. And again, personal preference. Coloring is totally 100% personal preference. So now I'm going to use my B00, and I may actually stop for a second to get my B01, but I doubt it. I'm going on just one side, and I'm coming up, and I'm just kind of angling this out. Now, if you need me to see this again, since this is pre-recorded, you can totally rewind me. Isn't that fantastic? And now this one, I'm going to the opposite side. See, so this one, I did it on the right side. This one, I did it on the left side. And we're not doing anything with this yet. Now I'm going to flip her around. I'm going to come across the bottom where the fabric is sewn, and I'm going to come out again on the same side as the bottom one, and I'm going to bring it out. I'm not doing anything with the middle except for going along the fabric line. Okay, you can pull those out a little bit. Now I'm going to use my B000, And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pull this fabric line down a little bit. And I'm going to pull this line down a little. And again, pull the fabric line down. And pull that one down. But they're not quite touching yet. Don't let them touch. Pulling that fabric line down. And I'm going to pull this fabric line down just a little because we're almost to our last color. So here we go. I'm going to turn her around. I'm going to bring that out. And again on this side, still not doing anything with that, don't touch it. Now mine are starting to touch a little bit, my little lines, because we're getting to our last color. Now I'm going to use my B quadruple 0, and I'm going to finish this out. And if you hear the, my marker, and I am going over the middle section now, but if you hear my markers, I don't use really super juicy, because when they're really super juicy, they tend to throw up on my paper. And that's just my personal preference. Do I want them wet? Yes, you want them wet because they're going to blend better. But you don't want them too wet. And I'm bringing this down. Let me turn this around so y'all can see it. So now I'm going to go back and we're going to do the same contrast thing I did with her hair, what I did with her face. And this is the wrong marker. I want BO4. So I'm going to have to turn her back around, I'm sorry. But now, where I started that BO2 line, I'm just going in and putting another small line. And now you guys can see, with as many layers as I've put on things, you can see why I am heavy-handed, and you can see why I use the thicker paper. The thicker paper, because I know some people love the Copic paper, but for me it's too smooth. The smoother your paper, the more your ink is going to sit on the top. The thicker your paper, the more porous it's going to be. So if you think about like watercolor paper, it's very thick, it's very textured, it's very porous. That color just sinks into the paper. And you can kind of move it around still because it's porous. Same thing for the Neenah 110 or the Neenah 80. Neenah paper is more porous than the Copic paper, the hammer mill paper, and the other papers out there. So that is why I like the Neenah paper, because it is more porous. I can move things around a little bit, but the ink isn't sitting on the surface. And that's where I myself tend to overblend. So now I'm using the BO2, just a little bit again, because I really want these ruffles to stand out. And I didn't quite get them standing out where I wanted them to before. There we go. And now I'm going to go back with my B00. Another wonderful thing about paper that's a little bit more porous, we can have these extra layers of ink without getting that over blended look. There we go. And the cleaner you keep your markers, if you're new to Copics, the cleaner you keep your marker, the longer your nib is going to last. And that's another reason I don't put a whole bunch of ink in my marker. And I probably clean my markers about, once a month. So I'm using B00 now. Sometimes twice a month, especially my skin colors. So now I'm going to pull that down a little bit, and I'm actually going to bring in a little bit of the B000 right there in the center. And then I'm going to go with B quad again and just kind of go over it, blend it out, make it look smooth, kind of like we did with the E00 up there. But I don't want to over blend, I just want to smooth it out. There we go. So we still have her sleeves. And her sleeves, as you can see, look a little translucent. So those, I'm just going to use my B00. And I'm just going to put a line here at the fabric line. And you can make them look roughly. If you want, like up here, just put like a couple little lines. And then I'm going to, not that one, this one. This is the B00. I'm going to pull that B00 out. And I'm going to put that right up against her side here. And just go right over that E marker, because that's okay. It's not going to do anything bad. So, and then the B quad, we're just going to go ahead and finish that out. It'll kind of make her skin look a little blue, because that's what color her little sheer sleeve is. Say that 10 times fast. There we go. So those are done. Now for the flowers. Now I learned, I cannot take credit for these flowers. I learned how to do these flowers from Irina of La La Land Crafts. And I will put a link to her video because her video is even better. But what she shows to do is to make a little like half circle or comma, and then you start in the center of that, and you make another one going the opposite way. Let me grab my pen so y'all can see better. Here we go. So you do a little circle like this, and I practiced with a pen, with a pencil for the longest time. So a little half circle and a little half. My pen does not want to work on this paper. Goodness gracious. Let me see if I can find, let me see. Here's a gold pen. That'll work. Maybe, hopefully. So half a moon, comma, whatever you want to call it, in the center, and go back this way. And then we're going to go over here and over here, and then over and down, and over and down. Kind of like, let's see, I got to do it faster. There we go. I went the wrong way with that one. That's why it was throwing me up. So half a moon, a backwards half moon, half moon, half moon, over the top and around the bottom. Okay, and I'm going to start out with my lighter color, my B00, and I'm going to do that on her headband and across this part of her top. And I'm just going to do it random, and I'm going to do it to where, like, you want to do like little half ones so that it looks like it's the real pattern on the shirt, like material. So I know it's really light and you can probably barely see it, but it's there. I promise it's there. Okay, there we go. And now for the top, I'm just going to go ahead and get her headband done. And the more you do these, the easier it's going to be. But when I very first started, I actually started with doing the pencil lines just like I did her arms. And then I did the roses over the, you know, I would erase them a little bit and then do them. Okay, lickety split. Now I'm going to use, what did I use? I used the 04. Now the 04, we're not going to go completely over it. I'm just going to go over, like, I'm going to start and then flick it out so it gives it some contrast. So I'm not doing the whole thing. And when I'm doing it, let's see, so I'm going to use my B02 so you can see it better. So I made the flower, and I'm going on the top here. I'm going this way, and then I'm going from the bottom, and I'm just going opposite ends that I did the other one, okay? Because then it kind of brings it all together. So more up here. And then after we do this, we're going to put our leaves in. Because we've got to have leaves with our flowers, right? And if you do both the same side and forget to do the opposite, don't worry about it. I think I've already done that like 4 times because I forget what I'm doing because I'm talking. So don't even worry about it. It'll still look just fine. See, that one I just did the whole thing. That's what happens when you run your mouth and you talk at the same time. Or run your mouth and color at the same time. Okay, I'm going to do a little something right there just to fill that spot. So now I am done with my blue. So I'm going to put those away. And now I'm going to use YG23. And I'm going to use G16 for the leaves. So I'm going to go ahead and just flick, just tiny flicks. I'm pushing down a little bit on the tip to make that fat little flick. Here we go. just some rando flicks here. And just have it touch like the very, you know, just a little bit of the flower. And it'll look just like leaves. So now to give the leaves contrast, because we have to have contrast, right? I'm just going to put a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of G16 in there. Because you don't want to take all the lighter green out. You just want a little bit of contrast. So this time I'm not pushing down, I'm just doing some thin little flicks over the light green. Here we go. And that part's done. So now what we're going to do is I am going to grab, what am I going to grab? I'm going to grab my N2 and my N1. So my N2, this is where we're going to do the white, okay? So her headband is going to be white, but I like to put some little creases so it looks like material. So I'm just going to come up with a curve here. Come out with a curve up here. Now, you're probably asking, why did I do the N after I did the B and the G and all that business? Well, because for me, and I could be wrong, you guys might think differently, but for me, if I do it this way, it looks like the flowers are actually folded into the material. So I'm going to put a little bit of shading here, and then we're just going to pull this out. I'm going to go all the way across that seam line. I'm going to turn her around, and I'm going to put a little bit of color there. So now for her white sleeves, I am going to put some shading. Not a whole lot, but a little. Now the lights come in this way, so it's not going to hit underneath the hair, but here it's going to, because we don't have anywhere else to put it. But we're going to have a shadow here, and we might have a little bit of a shadow, so we're just going to put that there. And then we also want to do her skirt. I'm going to do her skirt the same way I did her shirt. I'm just going to put a little on the side and bring this out. And put some underneath her shirt. Bring her around. And there we go. You can even like put an extra little right there. Now I'm going to use my N1. I'm going to blend it out just a little, not a whole lot. Just bring it out slightly. Just small tiny flicks. And I'm not doing it everywhere, just some places. So now my N0 is waiting to get refilled. So I'm actually going to use, oh wait, no it's not, here it is. I found it. I thought it was. But here's my N0. And we're just going to blend that out just a little bit more. Not all the way, just a little. And I'm actually just going over what I just did to soften it up. Let's see, go ahead and do a little bit on her shirt. But when you use the darker color, like an N, a W, whatever, if you want it to be softened up a little bit, or you want it to look white, just use your 0, because your N0, not your colorless. You can use your colorless too. That works too. But if you use just your N, your C, or whatever 0, it'll blend it all out, and it will still make it look like you still have all that contrast in there. Now I'm just going over with the N2 again, so I can get that contrast back in, those shadows and contrast. There we go. Make her shirt look a little, you know. There we are. Put these lines back in a little bit. Okay, and the white is done. So that needs to go back in that one, and these ones need to go here. So now for her boots. Her boots, I'm going to use E41, E42, and E40, and got it, here it is, E43. So E43 is going to be our contrast color. So we're going to start out with E42. Second darkest. So she's going to have a bit of a shadow on the top, right? And then she's going to have some shadow down here. We're going to bring this out a little bit to make it look round. And we're going to go over to the side. So she's going to have sunlight coming this way. So she's going to have most of her light coming from over here. But we still want it to look round, so we're just going to put a tiny, tiny, tiny bit right there. If you go on Google and you look at cylinders and see how the shadow comes around, then you will see that. So this one, so there's no light, because coming from this way, this boot is going to block this. So we need to put shadow there. And then the same thing's going to happen on this side. The sun's directly hitting this side of the boot, but we need to put a little bit just to make it look round. Now I'm going to use my, that was E42. This is E41. Go ahead and pull that out just slightly. And I'm not pulling out the, whoops, I'm not pulling out the other side, I'm just pulling out this side. Now I'm going to use my E40. With my E40, I am going to finish this out, and I'm going to pull the color from the other side. And I'm barely, I'm like barely touching, okay? So now I'm going to use my E43 for our contrast. I'm going to put mostly right here, and I'm going to put a little over here. Really make that shadow stand out more. There we are. And then I'm going to smooth that out with the E42. And go ahead and put a little bit of E42 over here. So this next part, I actually learned from Jennifer Dove, and I love, love, love the way she did it. So she, for the soles of her boots, she uses Y26 and just goes all the way across. And then W5, because soles of your boots are not clean. So we just kind of randomly flick, just some thin flicks in there to dirty it up a little. And that is how she does her boots. Isn't it awesome? So her boots are all done. Now I'm going to do the locket, and that is the last thing we have left before I start doing some work with the white gel pen. So now I've got Y26, Y28, 21, and 23. So I am going to start out not with the darkest contrast color, but with the second darkest, the Y26. Here we go. And I'm just going to go around the outside of the locket. But not, I'm just going to do it like that. So just like this. Wow, she really looks blotchy when I get her up close. Holy mac and cheese. So now I'm going to use 23, Y23. And I'm going to pull that color out. And we're working with a very, very small part of the image, so we don't want to do a whole lot. So this is Y21. Now I'm going to use the contrast color, which is the Y28, and I'm just going to there we go, just like that. And then we're going to do Y26, pull that 28 a little, and then I'm going to go to 21 again, Y21, and blend it so it looks smooth. So that part is all done. Now her cheeks, I just noticed, really aren't looking smooth the way that I like them. So I'm actually going to go back with my E00, or actually no, yeah, I'm going to use my E00, and I'm just going to use the side of my marker. I'm kind of flat flicking and real light. I'm just going to go over her skin, and hopefully this will smooth it out the way I want it to. Because I like things to look smooth. I don't like it to look all choppy and lines and her skin's getting a little bit darker, but that's okay. I don't mind her skin being darker. So now for me, her skin looks really much nicer and smoother. And I will take a picture of this. And if you're on YouTube, the picture was at the beginning of the video. And if you are in the La La Land Crafts Retreat, I will post a photo of it in the group. Here we go. Or La La Land Crafts Retreat. Did I say La La Land Crafts? There we go. So now she looks slightly better. She makes me a little happier now. And see what I mean? You can always go back and redo it again and add some more color. So now we are going to use a white gel pen. Now, I use this one. A lot of people have issues with the jelly roll because they say it doesn't come out, or, you know, whatever the case may be. This is an 05, so it actually, even though it says 05, it actually has a 03 line on it. But what I do, and I actually got this from Irina, just warm it up on your finger. When I was a kid, we used to have to warm it up and we'd just sit there and lick it. How terrible is that? So I'm putting the white back in her eyes because I went over her eyes with a marker. And I like to put just a little bit of shine in her eyes. So I put a little extra. And I'm going to put a little bit here on her little locket. And a little here. I hope y'all can see that. Can you see that? Okay. So now to make the flowers stand out, I actually took the white gel pen and went all the way around the flowers. And believe me, this makes a huge, ginormous difference as how they look and how they stand out. And I even do it on the leaves. And again, I do this just how I do the dark blue. I don't go over the whole thing. I just go over parts of it. See? Huge difference. So this one I'm not going to do so much because it's supposed to be in a shadow. But I still want to have a little bit so you know that it's there. Here we go, almost done. It's almost like lickety split. There, almost done, almost done, almost done, unless I forget one. I hope I don't forget one. Now another trick to getting these markers to work is you can't hold them straight up and down. You've got to hold them, well, most of the time, you've got to hold them at an angle. That will get them to work a little better. So there we go. She is done, ladies and gentlemen, whoever's watching this. She is totally 100% complete. So I hope you enjoyed the class, and I will see you guys next time. Bye now.